Hello, my name is Lisette Johnson. I'm the outreach coordinator with the ARC of Cumberland and Perry Counties, CPARC. If you're not familiar, we work with families and individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Here at CPARC, we like to shine a light on FASD, fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, as it's one of the most prevalent causes of intellectual and developmental disabilities, and it's entirely preventable. It occurs when a pregnant individual consumes alcohol during their pregnancy, and it is a spectrum disorder, and it varies in physical and intellectual delays. So I'm here today with Kamille. She's a 28-year-old
Hello.
living with FASD. To tell you a little bit about Kamille, she was adopted from Russia along with her twin sister when they were just 13 months old. She now lives with her adopted parents and her sister and two awesome doggies. She works part-time in the retail world and avidly advocates on TikTok about FASD as well as YouTube and Instagram. Go ahead and check out her handles on TikTok. It's PerfectlyImperfect955, Perfectly Imperfect on YouTube, and Instagram is PerfectlyImperfect95. I'll also have that information available if you would like to look into more of her social handles. So thank you so much, Kamille, for being here and taking the time to sit down with me. I'm really glad that we have the opportunity to talk about this because, it's definitely something that doesn't get a lot of traction as it should. And we're just really hoping to educate and inspire others, who may have the disability. So I'm just going to get started. And if you have anything to say,
Thank you for having me.
of
I'm
course.
very excited for this little interview slash podcast, and I can't wait to hear these questions you have for me.
Okay, so to start off, what made you start creating FASD content on social media?
So I noticed that my first sort of social media introduction was YouTube. Um, and I was noticing over the course of maybe of like 6 or 7 years, there was a lot of disability content starting to be pushed by other content creators, like Molly Burke. She's a famous blind YouTuber. A bunch of I watched someone called Footless Joe, who's an amputee, a wheelchair user by Chelsea Hill. She's a dance instructor and motivational speaker. And so I saw a whole bunch of people who were disabled on YouTube, and I was like, but I don't see anyone with FASD on there. And so I decided I want to try my hands in this. So I decided to get my twin sister involved, and we started making YouTube videos. But it was hard to schedule her wanting to make videos and I wanting to make videos. We were finding it hard to come to like a resolution of making appropriate content with each other. Jesse wasn't as interested in it as I was. So I switched it to vlogging. And Jesse and I really enjoyed sort of that vlogging. I like to put music and editing. And Jesse likes to talk. She's more of the talker. So putting her in front of the camera and just sort of showing what we're doing was really fun for her. But then COVID hit and there wasn't a lot to vlog. So that's why you don't see a lot of, I don't do a lot of YouTube right now. So in 2020, I guess when COVID hit, there was like this explosion of this thing called TikTok. And I had a private account at that time, and I was like switching through videos, just sort of privately watching. And the same thing happened. I saw an explosion of disability content on my For You page. And I went, TikTok. Could I do that? And what was unique about TikTok, associated different from YouTube, was you could use sound bites. So you didn't actually have to physically talk because I found sort of talking on camera was harder than I thought. And that's sort of the basis of YouTube. You sit and you chat to the camera. But on TikTok, I could use other people's voices or sounds or music to create this whole narrative, and that's how it sort of exploded to what it is today. And that's why I have a larger fan base on TikTok than I do on any of my other social media platforms because I gravitate more to TikTok than any other social media platform. So that's sort of how I got into it and why I wanted to do it.
Yeah, I will say, despite all the misgivings of TikTok, it's definitely been a highlight in giving a voice to the disability community. So that's really great. And what about your username? Does Perfectly Imperfect tie into how you feel as an individual with AFASD? What made you choose that?
It was actually my mom who came up with the username. Yet again, we started on YouTube, and so Jesse and I were trying to figure out like a YouTube name. Do we use both of our names? Do we think of something different? And I remember sitting at the kitchen table and we were throwing out ideas, and my mom goes, "Perfectly Imperfect." And I just was like, "Oh, yeah, that we have to have that. That's amazing." Because as a disabled person, you're already faced with like being imperfect just in general because our society sort of has this mindset you have to have the perfect house, you have to have the perfect friends, you have to have the perfect family. And then when you're disabled, you're faced with this kind of imperfect life because that's how society sees you. And so perfectly imperfect was I just thought was an awesome username to use as a disabled person, and it's stuck ever since.
Yeah, I do say that's a great reflection on your perspective of it. So that's awesome. And what about in terms of your content? How has the feedback been with viewers? Has it been overwhelmingly positive or negative?
It's been a mix of both. Um, TikTok loves negatives. It loves to push negative, um, not necessarily content, but like controversial content. So it's not necessarily gonna push the content that says, "Oh my God, this video is so amazing, you're awesome." It's gonna push the sort of negative, nasty comments that you have, but I definitely get a mix of both. It depends if my videos go viral or not. I've had a couple. So I've noticed if it goes above 1,000 likes, for the most part, it's pretty calm and everyone's enjoying what I'm doing. But once it hits a certain threshold, I will start getting the negative comments and the inappropriate comments because that makes sense. The more people view it, the more the more chances of negative comments to come. Because when I think this is how the algorithm works, when you start getting likes on your videos, I think it's the people that follow you that will see it first. And if you hit the For You page, that's when everyone sees it. So even people that don't follow you are going to see it. So it depends if that video is going to hit that viral climax, then you might be getting the negative. But
Yeah.
80% is pretty calm. And then the rarity, I'll be like, oh, my video is hitting a set amount. Oh, I'm waiting for those negative comments to hit.
Yeah,
So it's just getting there.
unfortunately, it's just part of what goes with it. You become susceptible to trolls and,
Yep.
then you have to experience all of that. I don't know if you identify as a self-advocate, but, you certainly seem to be one to me as well. But in your self-advocacy, have you gained any new insight?
I have learned over the course of specifically TikTok. So my parents have definitely taught me self advocacy. That's been sort of the whole journey. They've been my advocates for most of my life. And so their, I don't want to say training, but lessons have been able to, once independence hit, you're going to have to be a self advocate at a certain point. So, sort of their guidance has helped me transition through self advocacy through TikTok. Um, and then what I've learned over the course of like TikTok advocacy is you can't have an ego on the internet. Because if you have an ego on the internet, you're going to stir up trouble for yourself and others. So you really got to, if you screw up, you have to admit it. I've screwed up a couple of times. At the beginning of my TikToks, there were phrases I would say, like I would say, FASD is 100% preventable. You can't change my mind. And then someone came on, one of my videos had gone viral. And so I had gotten a lot of comments being like, well, FASD isn't 100% preventable, da 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 da. And at first I was ego. I was like, nah, you don't know what you're talking about. It's 100% preventable. You can't change my mind. And then my mom, we were talking, she's like, well, what about addiction? You know, that's a disease. Some people can't help it. So is it really fair to say it's 100% preventable when someone's dealing with a disease? And people started saying, well, FASD can happen before you're even know you're pregnant. So is it 100% preventable there? And so I had to sort of switch my mindset, apologize in a video and say, you know what, you're right. I need to make sure that my content is appropriate for everyone, even if the conversation can be a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah, yeah, that definitely is a different insight and what it is about overcoming that, and working towards that. But that is great insight. It's great that you have your mom, helping you with that guidance. And despite, I know you're trying to say you don't want to have ego. I think you stand your ground very well, though. So,
Yeah.
um, outside of TikTok, personally, what is the biggest challenge you think you face because of your diagnosis?
So there's been a couple of throughout sort of my FASD life. School was one of the things that was challenging just because FASD has a learning component, and basically, as kids and young adults, you basically spend your entire childhood through school. So I think schooling was a huge challenge. Um, Independence, we are not there yet, but I'm sure that will be sort of a challenge at some point. Um, but I think the one that's always stayed significant and always been with me is making and creating friendships and relationships, because friendships and relationships will always be in your life. And I've never quite been able to fit the key into the keyhole correctly. I've always missed opportunities to have a larger friend group. I have a very small niche of people who I hang out with. I can never figure out why some friendships leave and some friendships come. I can never stay with a specific friend group. So I think friendship and relationships has always been sort of stagnant and a bigger issue or something that I struggle with a lot.
Mm-hmm. And do you feel you get a lot of social support or?
I think because, I mean, I get support through my parents, but it's always had trouble sort of getting into those social crowds. I always feel like I'm walking on a very thin line with my disability, because some people will see me as low support needs. So I don't necessarily fit into sometimes the social box of my peers of FASD because they might be higher support needs. But then when I get into the actual peer level of like my age group of people that aren't disabled, then I can see the deficits and I become very quiet and reserved, and I can't find that sort of in between state of friendships. I'm always walking that fine line between being not disabled enough for one crowd but then being too disabled for another.
Right. And
So
that's pretty prevalent among a lot of, disabilities, and
yeah.
it's trying to find that middle ground. But in light of that, those struggles, do you have any advice for other individuals with AFASD?
um it's not your necessarily fault if you can't find your 100% friend group. If you can find a close knit group on the internet, whether that's Discord, through gaming, whether that's through a hobby that you're doing and you visit that hobby group once a week. You don't have to have like a hundred friends to create a friendship. It could be like three friends, and that could be enough. And you could carry on those three friends for the rest of your life. I mean, I know in high school it's a big thing for young kids to be like in the popular group, and if you don't have this X amount of people and friends on like Facebook, Instagram, then then it's not a then you're not popular. I mean, you're not the it crowd. It doesn't You
Right.
shouldn't focus on that. It's almost like the little friend groups that matter, not the big friend groups.
Yeah, I
Because how
agree.
many people in that
Quality over quantity. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
definitely.
yeah.
And it seems like you've had a lot of support, with your parents, and they've been great with you and helping you on this journey. So, do you have any advice to parents of an individual with FASD?
Talk to your kids about FASD because it is their truth, it is their diagnosis that they are going to have to carry out through their entire lives. Um, what my parents did was they told me at a very young age. I don't know the specific age, but I know it was very young. Um, the best way you can teach your kids is through storybooks. So finding different types of disability books at a young age could really help them get into that disability world. One of the books that my parents used to read, I just don't know because since I was in the early 2000s when this book came out, so I don't know if it's appropriate now. But one of the books that my parents shared to us was Don't Call Me Special. And it was a book, I think, based on invisible disabilities. And that was really important because a lot of times books are about physical disabilities, which is fine, but there's not as much representation when it comes to invisible disabilities. So this book was really great at talking about kids that maybe needed EA support in school, maybe didn't necessarily look disabled, but were disabled. And it was called Don't Call Me Special. And it was um, a great tool that my parents used to help us navigate the disability scene when it was slowly time. Because it's important to start talking about that because FASD has a learning disability component. The kids are going to start noticing they are different probably before you think they're ready because they're going to be in school for most of their lives, and school is probably going to be one of the most challenging things that a child's going to have to go through in their FASD child's journey. So making sure that when school starts, even start having that conversation in kindergarten, maybe grade one, because kids are going to notice that your kid is maybe a little bit different, especially if they have an EA or a para with them through class. Kids are going to notice that. And your kids, in a way, are going to have to self advocate in their classroom and explain to their peers why they have EAs or special support or a computer that comes with them or an AAC device or whatever it is.
Yeah, that is great insight. Yeah, definitely to and it also just help destigmatize overall. Yeah.
Yep.
So overall, what supports do you think have been most helpful for you and could be most helpful for others, children or adults?
Um, so in school, I know we're talking a lot about school, but I feel like that's really important at that time and age. Um, Having even the parents to have their own self advocates, someone that can stand by the parents as they go to IEP meetings, um, support for the kids in school to be able to fight for that EA support if a child needs it. Even family support um, is really important because parents might come home tired and exhausted from having to fight very simple, what we would think as like human rights, to be able for their kid to have the right to proper education in school. That's tiring to have to fight every single year or every couple of months when an IEP meeting comes involved. To have a support system of a family is really important so that the parents can vent to their family members, is really, really important for them.
Yeah, I agree. No, definitely you need that outside support for everyone involved, the family and the individual. So when you look or day to day, what do you think is like one of the biggest misconceptions that people have about you?
I think one of the biggest is their identity to what they think disability should look like. There's been so many instances. Sometimes this has happened at work where my coworkers or even my managers think they're doing a really nice thing by saying, "Oh, if you didn't tell me you were disabled, I would have no clue." And I'm like, "Oh, great,
Yeah.
thank you. I don't know what to do with that comment." Um, I think we need to stop putting disability in a very specific box, because that's stopping people from learning or picking up things that someone might be struggling with. So at work, yeah, I can look like everyone else, but in my brain and in my body, I feel like sometimes I'm working 2 times harder than everyone else just to keep
Hmm.
up like a persona of working hard and trying to get things done. And people will be like, "Oh, you work so well and you work so fast." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm trying to compensate for the panic that I'm having
Yeah.
of
Almost
trying to keep up."
masking, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Camille, for the near future, what are you hoping to obtain or what are your goals?
I hope that either YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, I'm hoping that it will grow more. Uh, Everyone wants their account and their numbers to grow more so that more people can see. I hope maybe one day this can turn into a payable future because I live in Canada, so I don't get paid for any of the TikToks I make. I don't have enough subscribers yet to get paid on YouTube, which is fine. I'm slowly going through that. I know that's a harder journey to get through, but I hope people will see it. And my sort of dream would be to like travel the world and go to motivational speaking conferences and just be a one of the voices for FASD, because I definitely don't necessarily want my voice. I want my voice to be one of the voices, but I hope that my videos will inspire more people to start making their own FASD content, because there's so many different perspectives of FASD and my perspective is one out of millions. So I hope that it can be it will be a motivator for other people to want to speak.
Yeah, no, definitely. And if we have anything in the future with CPARC, and you're willing to travel, we would love to have you because
Oh,
we'd
thank
love to
you.
get that started and get your voice out there and hopefully get that track going for others. Um, do you find that people often have misconceptions or judgments of you based just by your diagnosis?
Not Yes. I definitely have, I'm not gonna tell names, but I definitely have specific family members that are outside my mom and dad that don't quite understand. They understand I'm disabled, but they don't quite understand that my disability is disabling. So they think if I can do one thing, that means I can do everything. And that's not necessarily the case. I can verbally speak very, very well, but if you put a math sheet in front of me, you'll learn pretty quickly that I'm 28 and I can't do, let's say, level grade 4 math. So there's like a discrepancy of like, wait, why can't you do that, but you can do this?
Hmm.
And it's like, because FASD is a spectrum and I I'm not good at everything, just like anybody else. Um, and I think also on TikTok, people have this misconception that everybody that you will meet that has FASD has the facial features. I'm one of that percent that does have the facial features. That's how I ended up getting diagnosed. But people like to use the facial features as an insult to try to insult me. They're like, "Oh yeah, you look exactly like the diagram that I saw on the internet today." I'm like, really? Because my mom can't pick up my facial features. I can't pick up my own facial features. The only one that could pick up my facial features was my neurologist who diagnosed me. Are you being biased in this conversation right now because you've heard FASD, so now in turn you're thinking that you're seeing my facial features
Right.
when maybe they're not as visible as you're claiming they are.
And they're at the end of the day, they're just minor characteristics. They don't
Yeah,
define, you have a very unique and beautiful face that's just unique
thank
to
you.
yourself. It's not anybody else. So would you say that your family was like where you first started experience, like what is the earliest age that you started experiencing it? And was it with family, with stigma, or just, misconceptions?
Interesting that you say that because probably in a way, even though I don't remember it, it was probably family was the first sort of challenge that my mom at least had to face and try to explain to sort of my other relatives why I could do this and why I couldn't do that. But I think for me, the when I started getting stigma was in school, probably in grade 3 or 4, strangely enough, because I remember I've had an EA since kindergarten all the way up to grade 12. So from kindergarten to probably grade 2 or 3, everyone was sort of like okay with it. And then when grade 3, 4 hit, you start getting the peer pressure and the cliques and the popular groups. And that's when a shift happened, where I didn't notice at the time, but the friend groups sort of started slipping away. The the comments that I would get would not necessarily be appropriate. I think they probably started asking why I had an EA. Unfortunately, I don't remember this, but my mom loves to share this story where I was at a birthday party with one of my best friends, and one of my classmates came up very boldly and told me why I was so stupid. Like boldly said, "Why are you so stupid? You're like the stupidest person in our class." And apparently, because my parents made me so confident in my disability, I apparently said to them, "Well, I'm stupid because I'm disabled. I'm stupid because I have a learning disability," sort of like telling them I'm disabled. What's the problem with that? You're the one asking the weird sort of questions here. Um, Even though I don't think I'm stupid, it was sort of, I guess, my grade 3 or grade 4 mind just being like, well, I am what I am. I don't know what your question is.
Yeah.
What's your problem?
So from the early experiences that you can remember, overall, how does it make you feel when you get like, these judgments based on your diagnosis and not who you are as a person?
It's it feels very isolating. It's a very isolating feeling. It feels like the best way I can explain it is there's always been a very thin glass wall in front of me that I can only see. And if I put my hand up to this thin piece of glass, it's a separation between me and everyone else. So everyone else doesn't see this thin piece of glass, but I do. And it's a very sort of it's isolating. It's like a pit in your stomach, sort of like, oh right, I'm disabled and I am different from you. And it's definitely not a nice feeling to have in the moment.
And how are you overcoming that wall now?
I think being able to be open with my family has really helped me. And I think because I'm able to talk with my family, that's one of the reasons why I haven't had any major mental health crises. Just because we do have these conversations often. We have various conversations, either it's about independence or things that I'm good at or things that I'm not good at. It's just a very natural conversation in my household. So even though it's not necessarily natural in my outside environment, just because of the way society treats disability, it is very, very natural in my own household. So it's is a weight off my shoulders when I come home that I can um, express however I'm expressing in the moment to my immediate family. And I think that helps a lot.
Yeah, that sounds like you have a perfect little safe space, and like a refuge to come to. So when we're talking about FASD overall, if there was just one thing that you would want somebody to take away from all of this, what would it be?
That one alcoholic drink is not worth your child becoming disabled. It is not worth that risk. We do not know what the safe amount of alcohol is. Please leave the alcohol out of it. If you are someone who does not struggle with addiction, if you are someone who just casually drinks or thinks that one or two drinks a week is okay, please, it's not. Don't don't take that risk.
And if you do have addictions, it would be good to, seek the resources that you need, because stopping whenever possible is always for the best. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, getting help. If you feel safe. I understand if some people who suffer with addiction might not feel safe to tell their doctor of a risk of taking their child away, but finding that person that could help them,
Hmm.
um, maybe slowly sober off the alcohol, because sometimes it is dangerous just to cold turkey. If you do suffer with addiction, that could put more stress on you and the child. But making sure you have a support plan in place. And if the child unfortunately does end up with FASD, making sure early intervention is key so that the parent and the kid can get that support almost immediately.
Super impactful. Thank you so much for your insight on that. We're going to end on that note. And I just want to thank you again for sitting down and having this conversation with me. It's pretty heavy stuff, but it's stuff that needs to be said, and it's good to, get it out there. Anyone viewing this video, please go check out Kamille's TikTok and her other social media profiles, YouTube and Instagram. And feel free to also check out our website, cparc.org, and find us on Facebook to get more information on FASD and other related developmental disabilities. And we're just going to end it there. Thank you.